The 2021 Mexican Grand Prix won't go down as an absolute classic, although try telling that to the hundreds of thousands of fans who cheered on Sergio Perez to a memorable podium on home soil in Mexico City. The race was also hugely significant in the championship battle, with Max Verstappen turning around a bad day at the office for Red Bull in qualifying to take a dominant victory and extend his points lead over Lewis Hamilton. In this new video format, we've chosen the main winners and losers from the weekend. We hope you enjoy it and make sure you give us your nominations in the comments too. And if you're expecting to see Perez in this list somewhere too, then here's a quick spoiler: the man voted driver of the day doesn't feature here. For all the emotion of his historic home podium, we judged his failure to get second too significant for him to be classed as a winner, but equally not so disappointing that we could consign Mexico's hero to our losers list. With Perez not quite able to take second from Hamilton and Mercedes sacrificing Valtteri Bottas to deny Verstappen fastest lap, this wasn't quite as perfect as it could have been for the World Championship leader. But it really wasn't far off, especially considering the disappointment of Mercedes upstaging Red Bull in qualifying. The key thing for Verstappen wasn't so much the size of the point swing as the size of the message he sent to Mercedes. It was one of 2021's most emphatic and comfortable Grand Prix wins, and it was set up with a bold and no-nonsense down the outside move into the first corner. Verstappen did everything he had to, and with only 4 races left now, a points lead this big is not going to be easy to overcome. For the third consecutive F1 race weekend, Hamilton's hopes of clinching a record-breaking 8th World Championship were reduced. An unlikely Mercedes front row lockout was quickly dissolved by Hamilton's lack of confidence on the brakes, Bottas' poor positioning, and a superbly confident move from Verstappen. Thereafter, Hamilton had no answer for Verstappen's pace, and he had to look backwards to defend from Perez. He did this well and limited the damage from a weekend that was always going to be painful, but this was a comprehensive beating at the hands of Verstappen and Red Bull. Another defeat in Brazil could leave Hamilton in that uncomfortable 2016 type scenario where his rival can afford to finish second in the last 3 races. Both Ferraris were beaten to best of the rest 4th place by Pierre Gasly, but the team will be delighted with its result in relation to its chief rival McLaren. It allows Ferrari to move back into the 3rd place in the Constructors' Championship it lost at Monza, and it's the latest sign of the benefit of its newly upgraded hybrid system. 18 points on a day McLaren only picked up 1 was a great outcome for Ferrari. All too often, Bottas fails to turn strong qualifying form into a race result of the same quality. This time, a large part of the reason for his place on this list is just sheer bad luck, causing him to be the biggest loser in the first lap fracas. But Bottas was overcautious at turn 1. He braked so early that Perez nearly ran into him before Daniel Ricciardo did. His team also wasn't impressed that he left space on the straight for Verstappen to attack both Mercedes and sweep into the lead immediately. Bottas then spent most of the race bottled up behind, ironically, Ricciardo, and in somewhat typical Bottas style, he couldn't make a move stick. He at least prevented Verstappen from taking the fastest lap bonus point, but even that required a second attempt after the first one went wrong. Vettel and Aston Martin were helped a little by the first corner mess and the array of grid penalties for their rivals. Without those, they surely would have been beaten by a McLaren or 2 at least. But finishing behind only the title rival teams, a flying AlphaTauri and the Ferraris, and keeping everyone else well at bay is about as good as it can get for Aston Martin at this end of 2021. 7th doesn't make any useful difference to Aston's championship situation, but it's a nice little morale boost and a suitable reward for a well-executed drive by Vettel. Very quickly, before we move on to our next entry, we'd like to thank everyone who has already subscribed to our channel. Your support means the world to us. And if you're not already subscribed but you like what you see here, hit that button anytime so you don't miss any of our post-race coverage this week. Pierre Gasly took a superb 4th place that not only adds to his ever-increasing reputation, but also hauls AlphaTauri level on points with Alpine in a fight for 5th in the Constructors' Championship. During every F1 pre-season for at least the last half a decade, Toro Rosso/AlphaTauri has talked of a place in the top 5 as its season target. Every year it misses that objective, but maybe that's about to change. Yuki Tsunoda may not have been able to escape the first lap in one piece, which we'll come to next, but Gasly once again single-handedly delivered the goods for AlphaTauri with a tidy 12 points. Tsunoda's Mexican GP weekend featured a grid penalty, being sent out in qualifying purely to tow his teammate around, getting berated by his ultimate bosses and scapegoated for the sister team's qualifying failure, and then being bounced to a mangled halt in the first corner chaos. Ouch. When Tsunoda had a chance to show his pace, it was fast and he continued the progress he's shown lately. Perhaps going right off the road and kicking up dust as Perez and Verstappen closed on him in Q3 was a counterproductive piece of over-politeness, but by the time he'd got that call, he had few other options. Tsunoda only has himself to blame for most of his 2021 missed opportunities. That was emphatically not the case this weekend. Kimi Raikkonen might only have a handful of races remaining in F1, but he shows no signs of phoning it in with an expertly executed race in Mexico to bag 4 points for the struggling Alfa Romeo team. Raikkonen was jumped by his teammate Antonio Giovinazzi at the start, but he made an important early move on George Russell and then ran longer than Giovinazzi. He kept pace with the Aston Martin of Vettel and managed to stay well clear of the Alpine of Fernando Alonso to match his best result of the year in 8th. Bursting through from 11th on the grid to 6th place in the first corner chaos seemed to set Giovinazzi up for a great result at a time when his chances of hanging on to his Alfa Romeo seat appeared to be diminishing. There was no disgrace in being swiftly overtaken by Sainz's Ferrari, but Alfa Romeo then made Giovinazzi too vulnerable with a lap 16 pit stop on a day when some ran to nearly lap 40 on their first set of tyres. Rather than giving him another shot at the Ferraris or protecting him against pressure from Vettel behind, Giovinazzi was dumped behind the cars that had pitted early after their first lap delays, and he made little progress from there, finishing outside of the points. McLaren's grip on 3rd in the Constructors' Championship has finally been relinquished, and on recent form it will be a tough ask to get it back from Ferrari. Lando Norris's grid penalty and Ricciardo's turn 1 error consigned McLaren to one of its worst results of the season, despite Norris's best efforts to turn a long first stint into something from the back of the grid. McLaren knew this wouldn't be a particularly strong track for its MCL 35M, and from first practice this was looking like an even tougher weekend than it expected. Still, the team could have salvaged a result with Ricciardo, but his misjudgment into the first corner ended any hope of that happening. Alpine benefited from Fernando Alonso's brilliant navigation through the opening lap chaos to bag a couple of points from a weekend where it never really looked like a credible points threat. It got the strategy calls right with Alonso running a long first stint, but it fluffed his pit stop and he failed to make any kind of impression on Raikkonen's Alfa Romeo, a car that a team with Alpine's resources should be well clear of. Teammate Esteban Ocon wasn't a factor in the points battle after his race was compromised by a two-pronged clobbering from Tsunoda and Mick Schumacher on the opening lap. The momentum now appears to be with AlphaTauri in the battle for 5th in the Constructors' Championship. A combination of home hero Perez driving for Red Bull, pent-up demand because of the pandemic, the Netflix Drive to Survive series increasing popularity in the Americas, and this year's title fight created extra appetite for the Mexican Grand Prix, which is already a popular event. This year's full weekend attendance was 372,000 people. The promoter reckoned 40,000 more 3-day tickets could have been sold if there was just capacity at the track. But despite the immense popularity of the race, it's still only on a short-term contract. The first 5 Mexican GPs of this run were state-funded, but that financial support was lost and a new deal was done with Mexico City government assistance, attracting backing from local businesses. If the new way of funding the race satisfies the relevant stakeholders following this event, then negotiations can begin over a new deal. With a record attendance and a Perez podium, this is surely the best possible chance of the new model working and a long-term agreement being struck. If this weekend doesn't make the Mexican GP work, then nothing will. Those are the winners and losers we chose from the Mexican Grand Prix. Let us know what you thought of our list and make sure you tell us who you would select for each category. If you like this new video format, feel free to give it a thumbs up, and to keep up with everything we do here at the race, make sure you're subscribed to our channel.